So the Trump regime's weaponized Department of Justice just brought another indictment against former FBI Director James Comey, and it is once again already backfiring in the Trump regime's face. Just to be clear, what this indictment is purportedly about: 2 counts. First, threats against the president and successor. Second, transmitting a threat in interstate commerce. It relates to a single social media post made by James Comey last year. The post was of seashells that said 8647. And then Comey wrote, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." 86 means to get rid of. It's restaurant slang. Get rid of somebody from your restaurant, kick somebody out of the bar. The Trump regime claimed this was a threat to Donald Trump's life. They had Secret Service investigate Comey last year. As soon as Secret Service said to them, ask Comey to take it down, he took it down right away. And then, about a year later, right after the White House Correspondents Incident, Trump's trying to link Comey posting seashells in order to keep, Donald Trump conjuring sympathy and that he's a victim regarding the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And it's also happened right at the same time. Maureen Comey, James Comey's daughter, won a major motion in Manhattan federal court for her lawsuit against the Trump regime to continue. Trump's weaponized DOJ brings a social media criminal case. Yes, the right-wing people who railed against big tech censorship when they claimed that they were kicked off of Twitter unfairly when they were posting lies about COVID or right-wing extremist stuff or promoting insurrections, and they were upset at private internet platforms. They are now applauding and promoting the government prosecuting people for posting seashells that say 8647 and saying that constitutes a death threat. And why I started this by saying, is it going to backfire on the Trump regime immediately, is I just observed Kash Patel with those Kash Patel deer in headlight eyes holding this press conference, trying to curry favor with Donald Trump. And already, as Ann Bauer pointed out, Kash Patel says that the grand jury heard evidence that Comey deleted the 8647 post and apologized, although neither fact appears in the indictment. Did the FBI director just disclose evidence presented before a grand jury? Here, play this clip.
James Comey allegedly threatened the life of the President of the United States. And as you all now know, shortly after posting that threat, he deleted that threat and then issued an apology. All of that information was presented to the grand jury, and Mr. Comey will have his day in court and his ability to speak to a jury of his peers. Thank you.
Yeah, so did he just disclose grand jury material? When you actually look at the underlying grand jury indictment, just a few short pages, it doesn't say any of that, and it just basically lists the 2 counts, and the entire thing is the seashell post. That's it, the seashell post. And according to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, this investigation took a lot of work over the whole course of a year. That's what they were working on. That's why it took so long, he says. Okay, here, play this clip.
At a place where we can definitively say, to the extent we can definitively say, we will let you know.
Director Comey posted this almost a year ago. Why bring this case now? Did you always feel like this was a strong prosecution, or did something change recently?
This investigation just didn't come now. It's the result of a lot of work by law enforcement over the past year. We don't time when we bring cases around anything other than when the investigation is at a place where we should go to the grand jury, and that's exactly what we did in this case as well.
As a former FBI director.
And then FBI Director Kash Patel says, this took about 9, 10, 11 months to do. 9, 10, 11. Let's play it.
As you heard from the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney, former FBI Director James Comey has now been indicted for 2 felony counts. While many of you may read this indictment and view this matter as a simple investigation, it is the farthest thing from that. Every single investigation this FBI and our partners at the Department of Justice undertake, especially those that involve the threats to harm or hurt or even kill individuals, whether they hold public office or civilians in our country, are met with the same measure of investigative prowess and tools and personnel in partnership with the Department of Justice as anyone else. As the U.S. Attorney indicated, James Comey will be afforded every matter of due process under the United States Constitution. And as the Attorney General indicated, this has been a case that's been investigated over the past 9, 10, 11 months. These cases take time. Our investigators work methodically. They are career
clown show. And then Todd Blanche is asked, so what about like free speech? Like for critics who say, where does free speech end and an actual criminal threat begin on social media? What do you say to that? That seems to be a big concern. You know, the First Amendment, the first one. What do you say, Todd?
It in under 1 year. So that's really where we're at.
It's clear that you don't want to talk specifics today. But to the American public, can you at least give us a sense of whether you have hard evidence or evidence that shows that Mr. Comey intended for President Trump to be harmed? And then secondarily, for critics who say, where does free speech end and an actual threat of violence begin?
I don't know what critics say that, especially today, but it's not a very difficult line to look at. And it's not, in my mind, a difficult line for one to cross over one way or the other. You are not allowed to threaten the President of the United States of America. That's not my decision. That's Congress's decision in a statute that they passed that we charge multiple times a year. And so whether there is a defense, as you just described, Maybe there is, but the government will have evidence. I am not going to talk about the evidence that we have. That's unfair to him. It's unfair to the prosecutors, but it's enough to say that the grand jury returned an indictment. I'm just take one more question.
Except Kash Patel did get into specifics. Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds Substack, and Talking Feds podcast. So already at that press conference, Harry, they've already now opened up yet another avenue from James Comey to file a motion to open up the grand jury testimony. We know when Comey did that the first time with the first indictment, he uncovered all of the misconduct that took place then. We never really got to it because there was a statute of limitations issue. So the case basically got dismissed on the basis of the unlawful prosecutor being not the right person in the room, and there were other procedural issues before we even got to the case. So first it was the procedural issue of wrong prosecutor. Remember those days? Then they couldn't rebring it because it was brought on the day of the statute of limitations. So we never got into all the lies that were told to the grand jury, but that would have come next. So here, Harry, Patel opens up yet again right there the window, which is you talked about the grand jury, so you can claim grand jury secrecy. And a lot of people are wondering, how would the grand jury indict? Well, we know the Trump regime's been going into grand juries and not given the full story or given the false story. So, Harry, what do you make of all this as a former top federal prosecutor?
So much. Ben, I had seen the initial indictment of Comey with its raw combination of absence of probable cause and clear reprisal motive as the most shameful act that the DOJ had to that point ever committed. And now they've just spiraled downwards. Start with that press conference. Now that we have taken the measure of Todd Blanche and Kash Patel, and you can actually listen to what they say through the prism of what they're doing. You know, I just heard continual like buzz every time they said something that was false, and their whole pitch was false, as were many specifics. Let's start with this 9, 10, 11 months. It's a joke. The indictment has nothing, not a single fact that wasn't completely assembled as of a few days after the episode occurred, when Comey immediately sat down with the Secret Service and said, "Are you kidding? A threat? I had no intention of doing that. I'm going to delete it." And he did, as Patel has said. Now, was all of that presented to the grand jury? We're going to find out, because this is going to be a case where the so-called Brady material the stuff that's exculpatory about Comey is going to be voluminous, and they're going to have to show that they sent it over. But there's not a word about, we looked for 9, 10, 11 months about what? There's one fact that they need to establish that I think they cannot establish beyond a reasonable doubt, that in taking this picture of seashells that he happened upon on his walk, he was somehow himself, actually, because the charges require under the statute, that he himself was threatening the president. They talk a lot and loosely about, well, maybe he's exhorting others. One, that's not what they've charged. And two, it's a whole separate layer of First Amendment problems when you're trying to exhort someone else to harm a third party. You need to show it's imminent and the like. This very statute, which is deeply unusual, right? A mere threat against someone, but Congress has said, President, if you threaten him, that's a serious matter, has built in, it's not simply the First Amendment gloss, but it has built in to it in the statute itself that you can't be dealing with political hyperbole or any kind of sort of commentary or the like. The main case here, Ben, is it comes from the civil rights era when someone at a demonstration said, the first person I have in my sights is LBJ. Compare that with the mere retransmission of a collection of seashells. And I've worked in restaurants. I suspect a lot of the Meidas Mighty and Fed heads have. 86 means we're out of that. And the obvious inference when you stumble across is the day is going to come when there is no more of Trump. It's only the combination of cynicism and sort of, sinister action. It's really, they talk about Trump derangement syndrome. This is their Trump derangement syndrome, thinking that this is somehow a threat on the life or serious bodily injury of the president by a former CIA director. The 9, 10, 11 months, give me a friggin' break. What this is Todd Blanche showing he can do Pam Bondi a step bigger. He's the one, of course, who handles the press conference, and he can show to Donald Trump, I can really take something even more outrageous and more protected and charge the former FBI director. Also, by the way, they've included forfeiture allegations. You know how that works. Property that you use in a crime. Those are under seal, but are they somehow going to try to go after his vacation house? How vindictive can you be? If they've also issued an arrest warrant, and we're going to see if, they actually try to do a perp walk. It's all done to humiliate and embarrass with zero connection to any bona fide charges. And indeed, anything that's in there that you could construe it reasonably would be protected by the First Amendment and therefore by the statute. And I am sorry, Todd Blanche knows that really clearly. The cases that he's alleging or trying to compare to, we do several times a year, they are so much more incendiary, people, making clear I'm going after the president. They know it's a lie. And I'll just take one step back because it reminded me of the Southern Poverty Law Center indictment, in addition to all the many legal infirmities, and this is never getting anywhere. That there's a real lie at the center, just as with the SPLC. They knew that the Southern Poverty Law Center is not somehow embracing and fomenting terrorism or extremism. And likewise here, they know that Comey isn't trying to push in this direction. So any prosecutor worth her salt would say, are you kidding? I can't bring this case. Final point. This is not Kash Patel pontificates. We'll see what a jury says. I doubt that seriously. I doubt that the indictment can survive pretrial motions. The real question is, will it be thrown out at the motion to dismiss stage? Because when you put everything together, the proof of it being a absolute reprisal prosecution, just vindictive against Comey is strong. But they may have to get into some discovery. You'll see the Comey team saying, we want to talk to Blanche and maybe Trump and other people, and the administration say, no, you can't do that. But the point will come before trial, I predict, which is saying something in a criminal case where this withers on the vine. Blanche himself has to know that there is zero chance this actually results in a conviction of Jim Comey, and he's doing it just for sucking up, it's the best term, to Donald Trump. And man, oh man, what a absolute sort of embarrassment and disgrace he's been in 4 short weeks as acting attorney general.
You know, if you're a big Trump supporter and you hate Comey, you should be asking yourself the following. Why didn't Donald Trump do the Russia? That's what you were always been talking about. Russia. That was the thing that you care. And now all of you people who are like free speech, absolutists, the indictment you do is a social media criminal indictment. I mean, you've just exposed yourself as being just complete and utter phonies. And then also, it reminds me of everything Trump does, whether it's going it alone with Netanyahu in Iran and not telling other people. Just like you do the thing. And it's like, okay, we do it. All right, well, guess what? Now it's done. So now you got to do the thing once you filed it. Once you drop the bombs, now we're in it. So now what are you going to do when all the laws against you, all the discoveries against you, and every day from your best day was the last hour. Your worst day is every day from here on out. And that's the big problem. And that's litigation 101, not as a Democrat or a Republican. You have to build cases that actually have the staying power to be a real case. Otherwise, you get the headline, and now you're going to have to send lawyers into there, and it's going to be a mess. And it's going to look horrible, and then it's going to be dismissed, and then you're going to whine, just like you whine about Iran, and it's NATO's fault, and this person's fault, and this country's fault. It's the judge's fault. It's this person's fault. No, you filed a stupid, unlawful, dumb case. You probably didn't tell the grand jury the truth, and now you have to live with the consequences of it. And, you know, it's like, here we go again, Harry. Anyway, Harry.
Just very briefly, again, with Todd Blanche, whom you really can't say enough bad things about because he's a former ASA. He absolutely knows the laws, norms, and constitutional provisions he's violating every day. Everything you said, he's got to know. The time will come if he stays in that job where his reputation, it's already come, is in tatters, where people who ever knew him are just like, what the F happened to Todd? How could he be so dishonest? It's a Faustian bargain. He's just rolling the dice that before that happens, he'll have either a life tenure on the bench like Emile Bove, or the plum permanent job of attorney general, and that somehow will be worth it. But it's 100% clear that within the legal community, the prosecutorial community, he's absolutely lost and should absolutely have lost all possible respect.
Everybody, make sure you subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel, Talking Feds Substack, Talking Feds YouTube. Just search on YouTube, Talking Feds. Thanks, Harry.
Hey, thanks, Ben.
Love the Talking Feds YouTube. That's where I get my legal news from. Thanks, everybody. Hit subscribe here.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.